Look at a map of the world. Every coastline, every island, every familiar shape. You have known them your whole life. But that map is not permanent. Locked away at the top and bottom of our planet and high in its mountains is a vast, frozen reserve of water. And if all of it were to melt, the world you know would slowly disappear beneath the waves. Coastlines would vanish, cities would drown, and the map would have to be drawn again. It is easy to forget just how much ice our planet holds. Across the frozen continent in the south and the great island in the north, ice lies piled in sheets miles thick. Add to that the countless glaciers threaded through the world's mountains, and the numbers become staggering. Together they hold most of the fresh water on Earth, frozen solid and locked away from the sea. But ice does not stay frozen forever, and all that water has somewhere it wants to go. So imagine that, somehow, all of it melts. Every sheet, every glacier, every frozen field returning to liquid and flowing down to the ocean. The seas would not rise by a few centimeters, they would rise by around 60 meters, the height of a 20-story building. An unimaginable volume of water spreading silently across the lowest edges of every continent. And the places where hundreds of millions of people live sit right in its path. It would not happen overnight. It would begin quietly, at the edges. Great ice sheets, which have held their shape for ages, would begin to soften and flow faster toward the sea. Glaciers that once crept forward would retreat, year after year, leaving bare rock where ancient ice had always been. Rivers of meltwater would carve through the white, rushing downhill toward the ocean. The slow unlocking of the deep freeze has begun. At first, the change would be almost invisible. The tide would creep a little higher each year. Storms would reach a little further inland. Beaches you remember would grow thinner, then vanish entirely. Low seawalls, built to hold back the water, would slowly be overwhelmed. Centimeter by centimeter, the ocean would be climbing. Patient, relentless, and it would not stop. As the water kept rising, the very shape of the land would begin to change. Gentle coastlines would move inland by miles. Flat, low-lying islands, some home to entire nations, would slip quietly beneath the surface until nothing remained above the waves. Wetlands and river deltas, among the most crowded places on Earth, would drown first. The map you grew up with would already be wrong. And then the water would reach the great cities. So many of the world's largest cities were built right at the edge of the sea. One by one, their lowest streets would flood. Then their districts. Then everything. Familiar skylines would stand half-submerged, their towers rising from a new and silent sea. The roads, the tunnels, the foundations, all of it given over to the water. Places that held millions, emptied and drowned. In some parts of the world, the loss would be almost beyond imagining. Vast, flat, low-lying regions, entire stretches of coast where huge populations live, would disappear beneath the ocean. Whole landscapes that had been dry for all of human history would become open sea. What was once farmland, city and home, would become nothing but water, stretching to the horizon. Seen from above, the planet itself would look different. The familiar outlines of the continents would be gnawed away at their edges. New inland seas would appear where water pushed deep into low ground. Great rivers would swell into wide gulfs. Islands would break away from coasts that had once been solid land. The shape of the world, the shape you always knew, would be gone, rewritten by the rising water. For people, this would mean the greatest movement in human history. As the coasts were lost, hundreds of millions would have to leave the only homes they had ever known, retreating slowly toward higher ground. Cities would be rebuilt further inland. Maps, borders, and whole ways of life would shift. Humanity would not vanish. We are far too stubborn for that, but the world we lived in would never be the same again. And the rising seas would be only part of the story. All that ice does more than simply store water. Its bright white surface acts like a giant mirror, bouncing a huge amount of the sun's heat back into space. As the ice vanished, that mirror would be lost, and the darker land and water beneath would soak up the heat instead. The planet would grow warmer still, and a warmer planet melts even faster. There is something else hidden in the ice. Across the frozen north, the ground itself has been locked solid for thousands of years. Trapped inside it are enormous amounts of ancient gases and the frozen remains of a long-lost world. As that ground thawed, it would begin to release those gases into the air, gases that trap even more heat. The ice does not only hold back the sea, it holds back the past, and it would not hold forever. Step by step, the world would become a hotter, stranger place. Weather patterns that had held for thousands of years would twist into new and unfamiliar shapes. Ocean currents, driven in part by cold water from the poles, could slow or shift, changing the climate of entire continents. The gentle, stable world that let human civilization rise would quietly slip away, replaced by something we have never seen before. But now, take a breath, because here is the reassuring truth. For every last piece of ice to melt would take an extraordinarily long time, not years but many centuries, perhaps thousands of years. This is not a flood that arrives tomorrow. It is a slow, distant possibility. And unlike the ice itself, we are not helpless. We understand what is happening, and understanding is where every solution begins. Because the ice is far more valuable than it looks. It is not empty, lifeless waste at the ends of the earth. It is a mirror that keeps us cool, a vault that stores our fresh water, a quiet anchor that holds our climate steady. Every white peak and frozen sea is doing silent, vital work we rarely even think about, until we imagine a world without it. And the ice holds one more treasure. Deep within it, trapped in tiny bubbles, is ancient air, actual samples of the sky from thousands of years ago. Layer by layer, the ice has quietly recorded the history of our planet's climate, like the pages of a frozen book. If the ice were lost, that record would be lost with it. A history written over thousands of years, melting away in a single, warmer age. So is this frozen future certain? Not at all. The ice is melting today, that much is real, but how far it goes is still, in part, up to us. The choices made by our species over the coming years and decades will help decide how much of that frozen world remains. The ending of this story has not yet been written, and that is reason for hope. It helps to remember that our planet has worn many faces. Long before us, there were ages when Earth was almost entirely frozen, and ages when there was scarcely any ice at all. The world has drowned coastlines and raised them again, over and over, across unimaginable spans of time. The Earth itself will endure, as it always has. The real question is not whether the planet survives. It is which world we choose to live in. So the next time you see ice, a distant white mountain, a photograph of the frozen poles, try to see it for what it truly is. Not empty, not useless, but a vast, silent guardian, quietly holding back an entire ocean and keeping our world in balance. For now, it holds. The seas stay where they are, the map stays the same, and the frozen giants at the ends of the earth keep their quiet, patient watch over all of us.